Welcome to the Infosec Career Video Series. This set of short videos will provide a brief look inside cybersecurity careers and the experience needed to enter them. Today, I'll be speaking to Infosec Skills author, John Wagnon, about the role of secure coder. So let's get into it. Welcome, John.
Hey, Chris, it's great to be here.
Great to have you. So, John, let's start with the basics. Even if the job title might seem obvious, what exactly does a secure coder do? What are the day-to-day tasks?
Yeah, well, not to state the obvious, but a secure coder codes securely, Chris.
Yes.
No. And in fact, kind of, not joking aside, I guess, secure coding is really just coding. It's software programming, software development.
Yep.
But it's doing that in a secure way. And I would just say here right at the start, you should code in a secure way, or maybe to say it differently, you should never write a program that is not secure, right? So there are ways to do that, and just maybe a couple of points on that.
Sure.
The world has changed and continues to change. There's new processes like you'll hear about these processes like CI/CD. This is the continuous integration, continuous delivery.
Right.
And so, what some companies have done, companies that are moving this direction, and a lot of them are with more modern, processes and technologies, is that, you used to have maybe a software development team that would write, some code one day, and then they would kick it over to the quality assurance team, and then the quality assurance team would take some time and they would look at it, and then over to the security team, and then finally it would reach maybe some kind of testing, platform, and finally into production where it's live online. Well, now that whole process has been just like, compressed into. I mean, some companies I've seen some of these really, software or online, streaming platforms, that kind of thing, are moving code into production literally, every few seconds, like new code is moving into production. So that's how fast things are going. And so, anyway, so that's kind of the world we live in, but yeah, so it's, and I guess maybe another couple of things that I would point out in terms of secure coder, or what does a coder do? Obviously, you need to know computer programming languages, right? There's things like C# or Python is really popular. Go is a really fast, like really, really cool, fairly new one. Java, there's things like that you could get to know. And, in some companies have teams that will say, hey, we need this certain application, or we need this certain, thing done, right? So then they'll have a software development team that they will have, just on staff. And then that team will write the application for that specific company, right? Other companies are like, hey, we're just going to write applications. I'll pick on Instagram or Twitter or PayPal or DoorDash or whatever, right? Well, they actually, if we pick on Instagram, right? Then they actually write the program, they write the application, Instagram, and then other people come in and use that thing. So they have a team of developers that, they're constantly poring over that application, that web-based application to write it. And they're using languages like what I said, like Python and Go and C# and all that. So anyway, so that's, so the world of a coder or a secure coder is to create those applications using those different languages, programming languages, to do all kinds of crazy things in this world. So it's a good place to be.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I just for my own understanding here, it sounds like, I think when people hear secure coding as a class or becoming a secure coder, that they think, well, Instagram has actual coders who are making the Instagram app, and then secure coders come in afterwards and add the secure. But what you're saying is that it's more of an add-on to the concept of coding, right?
Yes. And in fact, there's this other term that you may hear in these circles called the software development life cycle. If you can think of like from the creation all the way to where one day it's like we're not using that code anymore. And so you'll also hear a term that some people will say, and that is shift left, which you can debate. Hey, do we want, what does that mean, anything or whatnot? But basically, the thing that you're describing, it's a great point, is that maybe historically you would have a team that's like, hey, I just want to get this thing working, whatever this thing is. We'll pick on Instagram again, right? I just want it to work. I don't care how secure it is. I just need it to whatever. And then you would have the people come in later and say, hey, let's lock this thing down, whatever. But now you want to when we say shift left, you shift the security conversation to the left, which means earlier in the process. So
Yes.
right from the design,
left to right development progress. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at a timeline like day one and day, X, whatever, let's talk about security even before we even start writing the first bit of code, right? So let's design it into it. Some people have described it as the security is baked into the application rather than bolted on, after as an afterthought, right? So, so I would say certainly today, and frankly, this should have been how it was the whole time. If you're a developer, you need to be thinking about the secure coding practices from day one. So it's not a hey, let's come in after and sort of fix it up. So that's a great point, though.
Okay, so let's talk about the sort of how-tos. How does one become a secure coder? Are there experiences that they need to become one? Are there education or certifications that sort of move you in this direction?
Great question. So one, you need to know how to program, right? So those programming languages I talked about, whether it's Go or Java or Python or whatever, right? And there's a bunch of them. I would say pick one if you're just getting started. Pick one of those. Python is a great one to start with. Go is a really good one. Although frankly, you almost can't go wrong if you'll just pick one and get to know it, right? And then what you could do, you could certainly take like online classes. You could sign up for Infosec, right? Learn all kinds of good stuff. But then there's also one thing I was going to point out is there's open source projects. And what I mean by open source projects is you've got all these companies out there. Mozilla is one of them, for example. Although there's stuff like the Pandas package, there's Visual Studio Code. There's a bunch. If you just type in open source project on Google and just say, hey, what's out there? Effectively, what's happened is you've got all these companies that have these different software developments going on, all over the place. And they have said, hey, open community, like just world community out there. If you'll pick one of these, then you can just grab it and start working on it, start creating a solution, right? And you can write it in, whatever. Maybe there's some that they're like, hey, you need to write this in Python or Go or whatever. But maybe there's some that's like, hey, if you'll just fix it, use whatever language you want. And then you can submit that into the company and say, hey, this is my solution for that open source project, that open source, problem that you posted out there, right? And then they would maybe accept that, or maybe they would accept part of it, or maybe they'd say, hey, you got a couple of problems here. Let's kind of, let's polish that up. And then you would become a contributor, right? You would become a part, a creator of that project. And that would be awesome. But then that's also something you could take to an employer and say, hey, employer, future employer, look at the work I've done, right? And it's all free. I mean, you have to, of course, use your time and effort to do the project, but it would be well worth your time. So anyway, and you asked about like degrees and certifications.
Sure.
Certainly you could get a degree, I mean, there's computer science, computer engineering, software engineering, that kind of stuff that you could totally go and do, of course. There's other certifications. Like the Security Plus is one certification, CISSP is one, the Certified Ethical Hacker, the CEH. There's other ones, if you're kind of leaning toward the cloud, there's like AWS and Azure have different developer and architecture certifications. There's Kubernetes, which that's a whole nother conversation, but Kubernetes has a different certification. And so, so there's a lot of different certifications you could get. So I would say there's no one magic path. There's no one, yellow brick road you must follow in order to arrive. You don't have to have a degree, but it's not a bad thing if you do, right? So
there's not necessarily a secure coder certification either. Like when you're taking the sort of secure coder path here on InfoSec skills, what you're getting is sort of a set of principles.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly right. And in fact, some people, so to your point, you're not going to go out to the, ISC squared or to CompTIA or whatever and say, hey, give me the secure coder path. That's not necessarily a thing right now, but it's more of a set of practices, a set of principles that you would employ, that you would use as you write code, right?
Right.
And so it's exactly right. Great point.
Okay. So, I guess my question here is, what skills does a secure coder need to do their job well? But I guess the larger question is, what skills does a coder need to do their job well? Like I've always been like absolutely terrified of the idea of ever having to do app development or coding or whatever. So like, what are the hard and soft skills that you need? What is the sort of like disposition of people who do this stuff well? Like where are the leaders coming from?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You mentioned hard and soft skills. I would say both. So maybe we'll start with the soft skills, and these are good. I don't care, man. I don't care what job you have, if you're a coder or if you're a, whatever, right? You need to work well with people. You need to work well on a team. Yep. Most of the time, if you're a software developer, you're going to be part of a team, whether you're the leader of that team or maybe you're just one of the workers on that team, whatever. But very typically, regardless of what application you're developing or you're creating, you're going to be part of a team. And so, the powers that be are going to say, hey, we need this thing. And inevitably, people have opinions. And, in the IT world, people can have very strong opinions. And so, so there may be a little bit of internal infighting there. It's like, no, we really have to do this thing. No, this thing is better, whatever, right? So you need to be able to resolve conflict, or at least be able to work in that environment, where there may be some conflict that arises, and how are you going to handle that? How are you going to help with that? Right. And so those are very good skills to have. But then of course you need the technical skills of, the programming languages, like we just talked about. You need to know how those work. Like you can't just be a great people person and be like, okay, man, I'm going to create the application. No, you got to know how to write the code. And so writing the code is very important. And, going back to that open source idea, or, whatever it is, or maybe you can show different things, projects you've done if you've taken online classes or whatever, but just to build that, that knowledge set of how to write, how to write code. And so you absolutely need to have that. But then I would also mention, this is kind of more of a soft skill as well, but just a curiosity about the job. So I think that definitely helps. Many people I've talked to just in my circles have said, hey, the curiosity of like, how does this work? Or what if I did that? Or, what's the art of the possible if I were to try this little thing or whatever? Yeah. I think that is absolutely, I won't say it's essential, but it's a really good thing to have, in terms of what do you need to do, or what do you need to have to do your job well? So those are a few things I would mention.
I love it. So what are some common tools, electronic or otherwise, that secure coders use? I mean, I'm assuming obviously you have to know the platforms, but are there any sort of secure coding specific tracking tools, testing tools, anything like that you know about?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a whole bunch. I mean, if you could imagine, if I were building a house or whatever, what kind of tools do I need? Well, I need a saw and a screwdriver and a hammer and whatever, right? So there's 1,000 tools out there to help you do your job well. But certainly the programming languages that we talked about, that's one of the just basic tools that you need. Sure. But then kind of on top of that, it's like, all right, well, how do I use this thing? I can sit here and write, a few lines of code. There are, and you mentioned this, or we kind of alluded to this before, there are some different standards, some security standards that have been written out there. A couple of examples are the OWASP has a secure framework that's called the Application Security Verification Standard, the ASVS. And that's a really good standard that you could use that says, hey, when you write code, these are things you need to think about or that you need to employ as you write that code. So ASVS is a really good one. The NIST, the US government NIST organization, has one called the Secure Software Development Framework, the SSDF. Yes. That's another good one you could utilize as you write your code, right? So again, these are guides, these are standards that as you are writing the code, this is telling you, hey, do this, don't do that sort of a, idea, so that you're not introducing vulnerabilities as you write the code, right? A few others that I would just throw out there, and I mean, we could spend hours on each one of these, right? Of course, just to kind of give an awareness. There's those CI/CD. You remember I was talking about the continuous, delivery, the continuous kind of idea. This code is being put into production all the time. There's a lot of tools that are used around that, because it's like, hey, how in the world do I even make that happen? There are some popular repositories like GitHub and GitLab. Those are a couple of different ones. Jenkins is a really good, a really popular tool that you'll hear about. VS Code is a tool that you can use as you're writing your code. It's just really cool. It makes all the text line up and makes it color coded, and it just makes it really nice and neat. So that's really cool. And VS Code does a whole lot of stuff. Another thing to throw out there is project tracking tools like Jira is a popular one. And you can imagine if you've got a team writing an application, writing code, and they say, hey, I just made this little update. What version are we on now, right? I don't know. Yeah. And everybody's doing their little piece and part. And man, how do you keep that version control? And so so some of that Jira project tracking does that.
Everybody's also hoping that you have a really good project manager on your team.
Yes, absolutely. That's another one of those career paths that you can take. That's exactly right.
For sure.
And then I would mention too, just generally speaking, API development. So the application programming interface, the APIs are king today. So you've got, RESTful APIs, you've got, all the older school like SOAP version of APIs. But anyway, API development is another area that if you just wanted to kind of dip your toe in that, there's all kinds of opportunities. And then from a security thing, just a couple that I would mention. Obviously you need to develop in a secure way as you're writing the code, but then you can come in after the fact and just make sure like, hey, let me test this thing. Let me run it through some kind of a testing tool. And there's dynamic and static application security testing, DAST and SAST tools that can help you with security testing. So it's like, hey, let me come kind of, interrogate your code and see if it's actually secure. And so those are a couple of things that I would, I know that was kind of a laundry list there that I mentioned.
Yeah,
those are tools that you'll hear about, or that you would use in your job, right?
Yeah, and I think that ties into with like you said, the sort of open source GitHub type thing of, I think a lot of this, apart from learning basic principles, one of the things I think is going to be very interesting about this to our listeners is that they can kind of work at this at their own speed without someone looking over their shoulder and like sort of, their job being on the line if they don't get this right. You can just sit there all night if you need to and just kind of tinker and tinker and tinker until you see like, oh, I figured it out. And I think that's probably pretty exciting. So moving on from that, what are some other roles you can move into from secure coder? What's the mobility like in this? What are some common pivot points from this type of coding into other areas of security?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the whole cybersecurity world, call it what you will, just this whole security world in the computer, space is a massive place. And there's so many different opportunities available. So, a software developer is in high demand today. There's no doubt about it. So if anybody is looking for a job and wants to get into that, you'll get hired, don't hold me to that, but I bet you'll get hired pretty quick,
Right.
And then, and so, if you start out, let's say you start out, you do a couple of open source projects and you're getting good at coding a little bit, you get hired on. Then from there, I talked about a lot of times you work in a team. So maybe you'll kind of work your way up and you'll be the team leader of that development team, right? So that's one place. But then, you can kind of start to move laterally in different organizations or just around the space and start to say, well, hey, maybe I want to do some of the testing. Maybe I want to do like pen testing, penetration testing. And, I've got a good background in coding and application development. Yeah. And so now if I come in as a pen tester, I'm probably going to know, hey, this is how you wrote that code. And so I'm going to try to like poke holes in it, right?
You know where the vulnerabilities are. Yeah, exactly.
That's it. That's it. Exactly right. So anyway, and then you could start to get into more of the design. That would be another place, like some security architect roles or, solution developer roles, that kind of thing, where you're starting to take a step back and say, okay, hey, as an organization, we're going to put this application, in some location. Maybe we're going to, it's going to be cloud-based, or maybe it's on-prem in some kind of data center. Maybe it's a hybrid approach or whatever, right? Public, private cloud, who knows, right? And so maybe you step into a role where you're starting to look at that and say, okay, I know how this application was built. I know what was used to build it. And now I'm gonna help, guide this organization on where it needs to be placed or what the infrastructure needs to look like, right? So those would be maybe a few different places to go. But again, there are hundreds, maybe probably thousands of different places you could go, in this role. I mean, once you're kind of in that world, and especially if you do a good job, then I mean, I think it's the sky's the limit. Your employer's probably going to be like, hey, we have this massive need, and you're an awesome employee. So will you come kind of do this thing too? And
Right.
And I think you probably, if you do a really good job, you may find yourself in a position where you're like, man, I can't possibly take all these jobs, so which one do I want? Right. So it's a good place.
Well, as we wrap up here today, for our listeners who are ready to get started in secure coding, what's something they can do right after they turn off this video that'll move them towards that goal?
Yeah, I would say if you don't know a programming language, go start to dig into that. You Google up Python, Go, C#, Java, whatever, and just start to learn the language. Right. Also look for those open source projects and pick one that's kind of that low hanging fruit, maybe that easy one that you could get some experience with, and then I think that would kind of put you on that launch pad to greatness. So that'd be a good place to start.
Beautiful. John Wagnon, thank you so much for your time and insights today.
Hey, thanks so much, Chris. Yep.
My pleasure. And thank you all for watching this mini episode. If you'd like to know more about other cybersecurity job roles, please check out the rest in Infosec's career video series. Until then, we'll see you soon.